Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review and discuss fantasy and science fiction books, and today I'm here to do a full non-spoiler review of The Third Rule of Time Travel by Philip Fracassi. So this book was released in 2025. I was very kindly sent this advance copy by the team over at Orbit in the UK. So thank you again to Orbit for sending me this. Did take me a little while to finish reading this one because I had to pause in the middle. But to read another book that I was sent early that I knew that my audience would be super hyped for. However, I have now finished and I wanted to talk to you guys about why I really loved The Third Rule of Time Travel. So what we're going to get through today is we're going to talk a little bit about the plot, we're going to talk a little bit about the characters, and then we're going to kind of talk about my overall thoughts and opinions and the score that I ended up giving the book. So the one thing to address is this will be no heavy spoilers, but there are going to be things that I need to set up. So in order to talk about characters, I may need to talk about, what they're up to in the book. I'm not going to spoil any twists or turns or big things that happen in the story that surprised me personally. But I do want to talk about the book, and I can't just completely vaguely go, I really enjoyed some parts, if that makes sense. So let's go into plot first, because this is quite a plot heavy book. I do really enjoy a plot heavy sci-fi thriller. So if you are familiar with Blake Crouch, for example, Blake Crouch has written a few really fun books that I have read, like Dark Matter and Recursion and Upgrade. While Upgrade was a bit weaker than the others, Recursion in particular is a really good comp title for this particular book, for Third Rule of Time Travel, because Recursion is all about kind of going back and changing the past. This book is less about going back and changing the past and more about going back and reliving the past. So here is, I'll tell you now the 3 rules. So rule 1, you can only travel to a point within your lifetime. Rule 2, you can only travel for 90 seconds. And rule 3, you can only observe. So these are kind of the cardinal rules that the main character, Beth Darlow, Beth Darlow has set out for time travel. She and her husband worked together over many, many years to essentially create time travel. And whilst unfortunately her husband passed away a year ago in a car accident, and the kind of setup for the book is that her experiments are being funded by this shady think tank science research business, and the money is drying up. So that Beth and Coulson went from having this massive team that was all working on this problem of time travel and how to commercialize or fully understand the process of time travel, so Beth has she basically comes up with the idea of how it could happen, how it would work, and then her husband kind of builds and engineers the machine, and then they kind of work together to refine it and go from there, basically. But then he dies in a car accident, and she's pretty emotionally distraught. Beth has unfortunately had an extremely hard and awful life, and what we end up doing is kind of following her through this really troublesome time of the think tank owner guy kind of maybe trying to take control of her research and take it away from her, and she's also trying to understand how the time travel works and how the machine chooses what moments in time to send them back to. And she's also kind of dealing with the death of her husband and trying to raise their daughter by herself. There's a lot going on in this book, and despite it only being 300 pages, I think the story is really, really well told. And while, I said that this is kind of plot heavy, this is kind of plot heavy, and we get a lot of exposition and that sort of thing in the beginning of the book. I do actually think that overall the plot has a really nice, strong character focus as well. All over, all the way through, I do feel like this book really nails the character of Beth Darlow. We've been talking plot, and we'll get on to characters eventually, but like Beth is really well rounded, and you really get inside her head in a way that I really liked. I mean, I don't want to go straight into characters. We should continue talking about plot. So this is quite a kind of twisty-turny thriller. Blake Crouch is a really good comparison, because Blake Crouch does this thing in his books where he like makes a leap. So he'll be like, here's this cool science and technology, and then he'll be like, but what if this went wrong? And then usually what he'll do is he'll then make another leap later in the book and be like, and here's the real consequences if it went really wrong. And that's kind of what they do here Philip Fracassi does in Third Rule of Time Travel. So we start off with this concept of like, here's how time travel works. And you're like, oh, that has a lot of potential for storytelling. And then you go further into the book and you're like, he kind of gives you this lead. He kind of dangles a thread in front of you and goes, yeah, but what if this is how time travel works and it's even more fucked up? And that I really, really liked. And I ended up reading this book like the first third, then I had to put it down to read another thing. And then when I picked it back up, I was like, I basically had put it down at that like first twist turning point. And then from there, everything was kind of like turned up to 11. So there was like tension between the characters that was really well drawn. There was a fantastic kind of twisting of the whole time travel thing going on. And overall, I think that Philip Fracassi has done a really good interpretation of time travel, but also a really strong thriller and a really strong character story for Beth in particular, the lead character. So while we are on characters, let's get into characters. So really we've only got a one major character in this book, which is Beth. There are a few really interesting supporting characters. So we have Tariq, who is her lab assistant and basically the last remaining member of their team. We have, via kind of like flashbacks, we have Coulson, her husband, who passed away a year before the book begins. I say flashbacks. Also, she's traveling back in time, so and he's a really interesting character, and the way that he's kind of set up in the book, and there's very much a like suspicion from Beth of every other character. She is a very guarded individual. She's had a really rough go of life, kind of in general. Like the book opens with what I would say is kind of a really big inciting moment for her, which is when she is in a plane crash where every other member of her family dies except her. And that's the moment that she travels back to in the first chapter of this book. And that sucks. It's awful. And like, obviously, she's incredibly traumatized by it even today, 30 odd years later. But she also has multiple moments like this. And we kind of revisit a lot of them during the book. And like, you can tell why Beth is so guarded. You can tell why she feels like everything is slipping through her fingers, because that's kind of what her life has been like up to this point. She's very suspicious of other people. She feels like people are kind of trying to take away her invention, her creation, time travel. We also get a really interesting plot where she where the owner of the think tank has brought in a reporter to like start the process of revealing that they have invented time travel to the world. And her interactions with this reporter are really good and really well done as well. So yeah, I think that Beth as a character, like I said before, I think she's really, really well drawn. And it's quite an interesting experience being in her head, because she's so suspicious, because she's like tired, she's suspicious, she's lost so much. And the book even goes into like how her traumatic past has affected her, and how the time travel might be selecting these moments to send her back to that are like these awful traumatic moments. So yeah, really, really liked this book, this character, and the way that Philip Fracassi wrote her. And I also really liked the challenge that she has as a parent. So I'm a parent. If you are not a regular viewer of the channel, I have two kids. One is 5, one is about to turn 1. And one of the big things that you really struggle with is to balance your passions with what's best for your kids. And 99.9% of the time, what's best for your kids wins out, Like, I'm not gonna go like, oh, I really want to get my booktube channel off the ground, so I'm gonna not off the ground, because it's going. I'm not going like, oh, I really want to do this, bookish event, so I'm gonna miss a kid's birthday party, or I'm gonna miss a ballet show or something. Like, that's not the choice that I have personally made. But Beth in this book has made a lot of those choices. So she has gone like, I love my daughter, but my work is very important, and I'm choosing to leave her with a babysitter so that I can do more work. I'm choosing to spend less time with her, And so the time that she spends with her is very valuable. And also there's this kind of tension and this struggle, because her daughter, Isabella, has lost her dad and is still reeling from that, despite being quite young. And, she does understand it, but there's definitely something going on with her. And then Beth also, she has this tension of wanting to be a good mother, wanting to spend time with her daughter. Also, she's at this point where her life's work, her dream, is kind of maybe being taken away from her. And that tension I thought was really well done. And, it would not surprise me if Philip Fracassi has had this issue with his writing. Do I go wholly into writing and publishing a book, which might take a lot of time away from me as a parent? I would not be surprised if that is a problem that he has faced, because it is so well done here that I feel like maybe personal experience, I don't know. I have done zero research on Philip Fracassi. I know that he's written at least one more book, which I believe is about vampires and is called Boys in the Valley. Anyway, so yeah, I think that tension across the book is really well done. So like I was saying before, we have the tension of, work versus motherhood, of, grieving versus moving on. There's a lot going on in this book that I really, really liked. And I think, it's not one of those books where I'm like, you'll only get it if you're a parent, but I think you will take something extra away if you are a parent, in that way of, sacrificing the time you can't get back with your kids. I think that that's such a huge thing. And that's a thing that I think about a lot when I'm, choosing to do things, like go away with friends for the weekend for a bachelor party, or like choosing to, work a job that the job that I currently work, I have to go to a lot of events and there's some travel, and it's like taking that time away from the time that I could be spending with my children that you literally cannot get back. Like, time is a thing that once spent can never be returned to you. And that's a big theme of the third rule of time travel. Time, you might be shocked to find out, is a big problem in the third rule of time travel. The way that the time travel works as well, where it is kind of this way you can only observe things, you can't like interact, but there's a great way that they find out how you can see if somebody is being time traveled into, because you can only time travel back into your own body, and like you can time travel like as a soul almost, like your mind can time travel but your body stays in the same place. Really, really exciting and interesting interpretation of time travel that I genuinely loved. And there's a couple of really strong twists where more is revealed about the time travel process that I really liked as well. So all in all, if you're a big time travel story fan, you will love this book. Rating and kind of overall impressions. So I'm sure you can tell I'm pretty high on this book. There's a couple of reasons why I might be a bit higher. So, I've talked about the parenting thing. Like, I do enjoy books about parents. Now I'm a parent. I feel like they're very related, having stories about parents who are struggling to balance being parents and having interests or, careers or whatever, like that does strike home with me. And so it makes the book feel more relevant to me. The one other thing that I really liked as well is the kind of overall pace and the kind of interesting twists and turns that the story makes, and the interesting main character. I think that Beth Darlow is a character unlike a lot of the main characters that I read in books. Many of the books that I read have male protagonists, not by choice, but just because that is, kind of how the fantasy landscape is, or at least was. And, I do read a lot of older books. But yeah, so the one caveat that I have with this book, and I think I ended up scoring this a 5-star or maybe a 4-star. It had a 5-star ending, absolutely. And maybe I ended up scoring it highly on the end because I just finished it and the ending was really good. But then you have the other side of it where it's like the beginning third of this book was a little bit slower. So I kind of struggled to get into it before the kind of twist and turn. So often with these kind of sci-fi thrillers, you'll be introduced to like a sci-fi concept, and then there will be a like turn a third of the way through the book where they're like, and this is how bad it could get if somebody abused this technology or something like that. And while that isn't explicitly the case with this book, there is very much a like, oh, maybe something is happening, There's like a maybe something outside of what you're expecting is currently happening. And that happens at around like 60, 70 pages into the book. And before then, I was kind of struggling with it. Well, not struggling. It was kind of like, this is good, but what's the point? The character writing was good. The story was okay, but I was not hooked yet. I was waiting for that hook. And I actually paused reading just after the hook. And then when I came back to it, like the rest of the book was like a 9 out of 10 the whole way at, some 10 out of 10 spots. So one of the big questions that I have is like, would I have rated this book better if I'd read it all in one go rather than splitting it like a month apart from starting and finishing it? Also, I listened to the majority of the second 2/3 of the book via audio rather than reading my physical copy, which I think added to the kind of tension and added to the, my feeling and connection with Beth Darlow, the main point of view or protagonist, because the audiobook narrator was really, really excellent. So yeah, I would recommend the audio for this one if you're up for it. I think she's a really good narrator. I wish that I had remembered to look up who narrated this book, but please do check it out, and look at other books by this narrator. I think that's everything. So to summarize, a great book. I struggled with the beginning, but could that have been because of the way that I was reading it. I was eyeball reading it from my physical copy at the beginning, and that was that makes that process slower. I don't even know why I'm going too deep into this. Essentially, first third, I was struggling to feel hooked. From like 60 or 70 pages in, I was completely hooked and really loved the way that it turned out, the way that it ended, the portrayal of the characters. So if that's the sort of thing that you might be interested in, huge recommendation. If you like Blake Crouch, just give this a shot. I think Blake Crouch is great, and I think that this book in particular is fantastic if you're looking for that and you've read all of Crouch's books. Thanks so much for watching today. If you've read The Third Rule of Time Travel, please let me know in the comments what you thought of it. If you are interested in reading The Third Rule of Time Travel and this book video has piqued your interest, please do tell me. We can chat about it in the comments. I can answer any questions you might have as well. If you have not liked this video, please do so. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I post reviews of fantasy and science fiction books every single Monday, if possible, and weekly reading updates and all other kinds of fun videos. So please join the community. I would love to have you as a member, and I'll speak to you on Wednesday.